Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Thursday evening, early afternoon. If it's the West Coast, the best coast, no one's here to hear that. So that's just between me, myself, and I in this room. I'm here in the office and just got done with my final session of the day, which means it's a chance for me to do office hours with you guys and answer any questions that you guys have. And so this is the time that I set aside every week for you guys and a chance to really take your questions and see what's been going on. So a few things that we'll talk about today, regardless of what questions we have, we'll take your questions too, but we're going to talk about the Slaying Shame Tour. Some of you have asked about that. You're seeing that the events are now on Facebook for some East Coast events that we have. So what is the Slaying Shame Tour? I'll talk about that. We also talked about a new book that's coming out later this year, possibly at the beginning of next year, but it's definitely coming out. And so we'll tell you a little bit more about that today in today's office hours. And then there's also a couple other topics that I wanted to bring up, stuff that people have written in or given me feedback on recently. And so I want to talk about those too. So let's jump in. The Slaying Shame Tour, as more people are logging in. Again, if you're logging in right now, if you have questions for me, this is the time to ask them. So it could be anything about rewriting your story program. It could be about emotional eating. It could be about plant-based eating. It could be about how to navigate through difficult relationships. It could be anxiety, depression, any questions that you have right now. I will be answering those for you as they come in. So let's start with the Slaying Shame Tour. People have been asking what that's all about. And the Slaying Shame Tour is basically a series of speaking events where I will be partnering with different gyms around the country. And I will be going and I will be speaking at those gyms. And I will be there to encourage all of the people in that city. So the people in Chicago, the people in Kansas City. Now, in this next trip next week, it'll be the people in New Jersey, the people in New York City, the people in Boston, the people in DC, the people in Baltimore. We're encouraging all of those folks in those cities that feel right now like they are hiding in shame. People that feel like their story's been written, that when we say it's time to rewrite your story, they say, no, my story's been written for me. They feel ashamed about where they're at in their weight journey. They feel like they've gained the weight back and they're hopeless, or they feel like there's certain aspects of their story that there's no way they could ever possibly change. We are doing this tour to speak to you people. And I say you people, but it's us. I've been there many times. There's some aspects of my story at times that I'll get dejected about too. So it's not just you. All of us collectively at times have felt ashamed about something, some aspect of our story. And in order for us to really rewrite our story, we have to come out of isolation. And we have to get out of isolation with shame, and we need to get back into community. The events that we'll be having in your cities is an opportunity for you to come out and for you to hear an empowering message, but not just an empowering feel-good message, rah-rah, but actually hear some research about what you'll need to do to rewrite your story. And also, too, we'll talk specifically to those of you that are struggling with food addiction, struggling with emotional eating, or you're struggling with certain aspects of your identity being stuck in spending years being overweight in a weight-shaming society. So for some people, rewriting your story means being able to say that, there's years of feeling like I never was a priority. And now I want to rewrite my story to where I actually make myself a priority. In order to be successful in my weight loss journey, in order for me to be successful in following all the dreams that I have, I need to actually make myself a priority. Some of you right now have not yet rewritten your story in a way that you actually put yourself first. You feel like you don't believe that you deserve to be first, that there's a laundry list of people that come before you. Like our guest BJ Swingle said on last Tuesday night's broadcast about the realization that she was putting the oxygen mask, the plane was going down, and she was putting the oxygen mask on everyone else but herself. And as a result, no one was surviving because she had to first get the oxygen to help everyone else to make sure that they could survive too. How many of us are not making ourselves a priority? Those are one of the things that we'll be talking about when we have the Slaying Shame tour next week. A big one that we're going to be talking about is a lot of people feel like I have to be a certain weight in order to feel worthy. So some of you right now are like 10 pounds away from some magical number that somehow floated into your mind. I don't know, was it society that programmed in this magical number? Strangely enough, the magical number is different for you than it was for me. And I say was because I no longer prescribe to magical numbers on the scale. But somehow some of us believe that this magical number dictates our self-worth. We're not worthy, we're not lovable, we're not attractive. We'll start having positive self-talk when I see this number on a scale. I'll start going to the gym when I see this number on a scale, right? So there's some people in isolation that are going to be in the cities like that we talked about, New Jersey, DC, Boston, New York City, Baltimore, where right now you're in hiding because you feel like you don't cut it based on some statistics or some numbers. Some of you might not come out. Some of you feel like you're in hiding right now because you feel like you're not where you're supposed to be at in life. By now, you should have already been married. You should have already had kids. There's so many different topics that we could hit on, but all of them lead back to one common denominator: isolation and its partner in crime, shame. And so what this is going to be is an opportunity for you to get out of isolation, get out of shame. There's something powerful that we saw in Kansas City and Chicago, in the Bay Area and Sacramento, when we get in a room full of people, and in the room full of people are all basically saying, I can relate to what that's like. I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed and lonely and anxious and eat those feelings away through food. I know what it's like to go from being invisible in a weight-shaming society because I was overweight to becoming visible after a weight loss transformation, and in part loving the new attention, and in part being resentful of the new attention or feeling overwhelmed by the new attention. I know what it's like to go through a relationship where one partner has weight to lose, but they're unwilling to do it. So one of the members of the couple loses weight and the other person stays back and continues to eat their feelings away and continues to engage in unhealthy behavior patterns. And for that relationship to be in crisis, and for some people, the feeling is the only way that relationship would survive would be for the partner who lost the weight to gain it back. So these are all factors that, again, they cause lots of shame. And one of the greatest ways that we can provide kryptonite to shame is through vulnerability. And the vulnerability will come from community getting together and talking about their experiences, being able to raise their hand and saying, no, you're not the only one, me too. And basically from there, we're not going to just make it a feel-good mountaintop experience of a night. We are then going to also put some tangible things in place in New Jersey, in DC, to actually say, if you live in those communities, this is our game plan moving forward on how you can get out of isolation for good. You can get into community, you can rewrite your story. So as you could probably tell, I'm very passionate about what's going to happen next week. And if you have cities that you're in right now, I see Sabrina on here. Sabrina, I'm not sure what city you're in, but for some people watching, if you're in a city where you're tuning in each week and you say, hey, I know a lot of people that are struggling right now with shame. I know a lot of people that are struggling with self-worth, people that are struggling with self-love. I know that there's a lot of people that are struggling with feeling like they're defined by the number on a scale. Then what I want you to do is send us a message here, or you could write down below, what city are you in that you want us to come to? And we are at a unique time right now where a lot of doors have been opening, and we're so thankful and grateful to that. A lot of great opportunities are coming about for this message to get out there and to get in front of more and more people. So if you're in a city where you feel like we could come and this message would be helpful and beneficial, we'd love to put it in front of you. And we'd love to do that through the Slaying Shame Tour. Again, this is office hours. I'm not here just to give you updates on where we'll be speaking at or what we're up to, although I will fill the time with that if we don't get any specific questions. But if any of you right now are logging on and you have specific questions that you want a therapist to answer, shoot away. I'm going on tomorrow, 98 Rock here in Sacramento, where I will be answering questions for people about Mother's Day. And I'm sure people are going to call in with lots of different family scenarios. So you can hit me with any of those scenarios that you have right now too, ahead of tomorrow's appearance on 98 Rock. But again, any questions that you have for me, anything that maybe you took from BJ's interview on Tuesday that really resonated with you, go ahead and hit me with that, and I'll be sure to try to do my best to answer your question before these office hours conclude tonight. So the second update that I'm going to talk to you about, in fact, I'm going to pump the brakes because Alvin has a question, and so I'm going to prioritize the questions here in office hours. I'll get to that second update about the book that's coming out later this year. I'm teasing more and more info of that as it gets closer to actually happening. So Alvin Blaylock says, how do you lose weight on a plant-based diet? So I have some experience with that. I've lost probably, I don't know, I didn't weigh myself, but 8 months ago I went plant-based. People keep telling me I lost a lot of weight. I went into the bank the other day, and one of the tellers there heard my voice, but she didn't recognize me. And so I've lost some weight. So I feel like I can weigh in on that, but pun intended. But I also want to really say that there are some amazing resources and people that are really, their main lane is to help you lose weight on a plant-based diet. So my main lane is to help you with the emotional side, although I've gone through the weight loss transformation. 8 months ago, probably lost about 80 pounds in that 8-month process of going plant-based. So let me tell you what worked for me. And then I'm also going to give you a plug to Chef AJ, amazing. She's an ultimate weight loss group, amazing. Spud Fit, the Potato Man, Andrew Spud Fit Taylor has a program where you learn how to lose weight on a plant-based diet, eating lots of different foods, including potatoes. Sharon McRae was my coach. You got, Eat to Live is a great book to follow. There's so many great resources out there. They're going to specifically talk about how do you lose weight on a plant-based diet. But let me just give you a quick breakdown of what worked for me. So what worked for me is this. I had a local here in Sacramento, a woman who runs the Sacramento Vegan Society. She's also an amazing coach in her own right, Linda Middlesworth. Linda said something to me that really stuck. She said, the key to weight loss is beans and greens. So there you go. That's the key to plant-based weight loss, beans and greens. Now, I believe it's Dr. Furman, and some of you know better than I do with this stuff, so comment and correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Dr. Furman that has the book on ultimate weight loss for the starch solution, and he also has a book on ultimate weight loss. And what they talk about in that book basically is that you got to stop counting calories. You need to stop counting macronutrients like protein and carbs. When you eat plant-based, it's not about counting that sort of stuff. What you need to do is you need to basically listen to your body, eat until you're full, and anything within that landscape, if it doesn't have a mother or it doesn't have a face, it's fair game for you to eat, which means it's plant-based. If you want to really lose weight, I would avoid processed vegan foods. It's very possible to be vegan and not eat dairy and not eat meat, which is awesome. But unfortunately, you could be eating a lot of processed foods. There's tons of processed there's processed what I would call transition foods out there. They're vegan cheeses, vegan spreads, vegan dips. They got lots of oil. They got lots of cashews in them, and all of that is good because it's plant-based, but it's not going to help you lose weight. So those are things that you really want to look out for. Is saying that most of your diet needs to be centered around whole foods, plant-based. So a key to what speeds up weight loss, as I have found in my journey, was eating a lot of beans and eating a lot of greens. And so I would start by trying to make my breakfast, my first meal of the day, tons of lentils and tons of cabbage and tons of, people already know where I'm talking about, Ethiopian food. That's my secret weapon. That and kiwis are my secret weapons. Tons of lentils, tons of cabbage, tons of greens. Or if I'm at home, I'll make a burrito bowl and I'll just do as much kale as I possibly can with my own homemade refried beans. You can just take beans and you can put them in a magic bullet or a blender and blend them up, and now you got refried beans. And I would take mushrooms. And so the key is eating a lot of greens and a lot of beans and mixing in some of your starches. I prefer, for weight loss personally, from what I've read and what I've experienced, I prefer eating more potatoes than eating more grains. Now, everyone's body's different, But for me, what I find is that potatoes fill me up a lot, and I would prioritize my greens and my beans first. And then if I had room, I would factor in the potatoes, and the potatoes would fill me up. It takes a lot of potatoes, which have been vilified, but it takes a lot of potatoes to fill you up. So those are some things that I would say. I'm coming back up to the top. Joseph Puro, how's it going? Joseph said, mangoes. My friend Daniel Robertson would agree with you on that. He's my videographer, and we jokingly have said that everyone in the plant-based world has their thing. His thing's mangoes. My thing's kiwis, in terms of like this one go-to fruit. You bring it everywhere with you, and it's like your go-to item. So his is mangoes. He would agree with you. I can't get mangoes out of my mind. Are they good for you? 100% yes. Here's a little tidbit for you. In our interview with Andrew Spud Fit Taylor, he is the man in Australia that lost over 100 pounds eating just potatoes for a year. It sounds like a fad diet, but when we actually talked to him, it was so cool to hear his story. Andrew is a scientist by nature, a teacher. He researched and he found that he wanted to find what was one food that I could live off of. And there was 3 candidates for it: potatoes, bananas, and mangoes. Mangoes was one of the candidates. So he had to pick one of those 3, potatoes, bananas, or mangoes, to live off of. And he did that for an intentional reason. He said, I just want to make it really simple to train my brain to get out of the pleasure trap. I just want to say that if I'm going to eat this one food and not make it any more complicated. He's now since incorporated plenty of other foods back into his diet. It's not just all potatoes, but that's what he did. So to answer your question, mangoes are extremely healthy. Now, what some of us might say is we have to watch how many mangoes we eat, or we have to, because they got sugar in them. Now, when it comes to plant-based nutrition, again, this is not my number one lane. Some of you who are listening to this may be plant-based coaches. You correct me if at any point I'm wrong. I'm a therapist, but I'm here to help with the emotional side. But let me weigh in from my own perspective. We need to stop worrying about sugar. Added sugar is its own beast, okay? So worry about that. But the sugar that comes in fruit, don't worry about that. Now, there's different people that are going to give you different answers. Some people are going to say if you're really concerned with weight loss, limit your fruit. Some people say if you're really concerned with weight loss, it doesn't matter. Eat as much mangoes as you want to. What I would say is this. There is sequencing there's a great Forks Over Knives lecture that was done about a year ago or less than that, but it was about food sequencing. And they talked about how when you sequence your food, when you eat the greens and the beans up front, and then you move on to your starch, your grain, your oatmeal, your pasta, your whole wheat pasta, your potatoes. When you eat in sequences like that, so first beans and greens, then potatoes. If you're still hungry, you go back to the beginning. Now I'm gonna eat some more beans and greens. Am I still hungry? Now some potatoes. Fruit would be for me kind of the end of the line of that. So I would go beans and greens, potatoes. Am I still hungry? Fruit. Now you might stop there and go, I'm done. I don't need to eat any more. That was enough for me. Or you might say, no, I'm still hungry. We'll go back to the front of the line. And you might go, but I want some potatoes. That's fine. Again, if you're really concerned about weight loss, this sequencing works. Just if you really want to get to those potatoes, you got to eat your beans and greens and make your way back there. What happens is there's so much fiber and nutrients and all of those things that we mentioned in plant food that it just starts to fill you up, and it's hard to make it all the way back through the rotation. I've been looking for that webinar, but I don't know if it's still out there. If it is, we'll find it. I was just talking with my coach about it recently. It's so good. It was one of the biggest foundational changes. That and nutrient density. That's another term to Google. Watch videos on that. There's some great videos about nutrient density out there, so watch that too. Do you still need portion control? Joseph, I'm going to keep going with your questions because you got great ones, man. Do you still need portion control? No. No, you do not. You don't want to be thinking about portion control. You want to be thinking about being in tune with your body. Intuitive eating over rules. Plant-based, there's parameters. Again, it's no dairy, it's no meat. You try to stay away from the processed stuff. Now, within those parameters, eat until you're hungry. So we don't want to eat to the point that we're like just so stuffed. but we want to eat when we're hungry. So I would rather people get in the habit of saying, am I hungry? One thing I learned when I went this way of eating is 2 months in, I stopped getting hungry in the morning, and I thought, but I should be eating, because I was so used to rules about when to eat. For a long time, I used to have trainers tell me, you got to eat the first thing you get up. I had one trainer tell me, you need to eat before you even go to the bathroom. Before you start the day, you need to go and you need to have a protein bar there to eat. So I would do stuff like that, as crazy as it is looking back. Instead, now what I do is I wake up and I say, am I hungry? Most mornings I'm not. Now, I'm not advocating for fasting, but I've turned into now doing some intermittent fasting where I stop eating around 8 o'clock. And sometimes my first meal, like today, I worked out this morning, but my first meal wasn't even until 12 o'clock. And there was no pain in that involved. I had bananas with me. I had fruit with me. I could have had beans and greens if I wanted to, but I just wasn't hungry. If I was hungry, I would have ate. So that's just something important to kind of note with that too. Beans and greens, sweet potatoes, or regular spuds. Potatoes are potatoes. I'll tell you that you could probably go down the rabbit hole and find that certain potatoes might have different benefits. It seems that sweet potatoes, might potentially have more benefits than just russet potatoes, or your red and your white potatoes, your small ones. But really, in reality, if you're eating potatoes and you're not, loading on a bunch of cheese or sour cream and all that stuff, you're probably going to be just fine. So potatoes are good all day long. Kale and potatoes are mine. Love, love, love. Yes, Crystal. And by the way, it is so good to just hear from you. Crystal, I've been talking about you on these Facebook Lives lately. I don't know if you and Eric realize that. But anyway, yeah, I've been talking about you guys. Crystal and Eric are two good friends who, a couple that recently from the Facebook Live show on Tuesday nights got really excited about plant-based eating. They'd never tried it before. They didn't think it was for them. Similar story to myself. And they actually started their journey, and they are slaying it. They are killing it. They're inspiring me. They just moved to a new city in Seattle now, where they're checking out more of the restaurant scene there and finding that there's places to go. One of the misconceptions is that you have to stop going out when you're vegan or plant-based, and you still can go out and still eat really good meals out. And they're also cooking at home a lot. And when they came, we got a chance to eat together, which was so awesome. And we went to the farmer's market and we ate a meal together, and we had burrito bowls, and we were talking about air fried potatoes. If you don't know about the air fryer, watch out. Even if you don't have an air fryer, you could bake the potatoes, right, Crystal? I mean, that's what you guys were doing. And there's this thing called Benson's salt. It's not salt, excuse me, Benson's salt substitute. You could look it up on Amazon. Benson's salt substitute. Oh my gosh, this will change your life. It tricks your taste buds into thinking that it's salt when it's really not, and it's made of natural ingredients. It's phenomenal. So good. Kale and potatoes are your go-to, and I saw some of those kale and potatoes, and that looked good. Everything you're doing looks good, and like I said, get ready for your interview, Crystal and Eric, because we're going to have you guys on one of these days on a Rewriting Your Story broadcast, because you guys are killing it. Just one foot in front of the other, but know that you guys are doing so good. Ashley's on the broadcast, and I want to say hello to Ashley. Ashley, feels like it's been a long time, even though it's only been a couple days, and I know that you've had a busy day, and thank you so much for hopping on. If you guys don't know Ashley, she joined up with the Dr. Mondo program and is now an extension of the program. She has an amazing message. She's helping us run the plant-based immersion group right now. She's an amazing photographer. She's an amazing social media strategist, operations manager. You name it, she's doing it right now for us. And she's also doing it for some other folks as well. And so anyway, it's so good to see you, Ashley, and to have you on the broadcast. Joseph says that makes sense. Ashley says, I've never been an intuitive eater until recently. I have to be honest with myself, and I actually hungry, or am I bored? Ooh, that's a good question. Most of the time I'm bored. Ooh, I love that. And what I want to say to that is that, and go below bored. So often what happens is we realize we're eating because we're bored, but there's also a feeling below being bored. So sometimes I'll hear people go, I'm just bored and that's why I eat. But what they'll identify is that really it's beyond that. They feel lonely, or they're feeling a little anxious. And why it's important to identify that is that there's more that you can do for self-care when you realize that there's something deeper there. Now, I'm not saying that it's always that. It might just be because you're bored and you're used to this habit, this behavior loop that you're in, especially with processed foods or high fat or high sugar foods. So it could be that you're just bored, but never rule out the question that there might not be more underneath the tip of the iceberg being bored. So that's something to really ask yourself. And intuitive eating, this is not something any of us are taught. We are not given classes. That, I guess, people say like we need like financial classes in high school. We need how to balance an online checkbook, how to cook, things like that. One of the things we need too is to learn how to intuitively eat. None of us, unless we're raised in households that really practice this stuff, and that's rare. A lot of us aren't intuitive eaters. So we're not, a lot of the hunger cues we think we have aren't hunger cues. Sometimes they're stress cues, they're physiological cues, they're emotional cues that we're then pairing with food, and it's really dangerous. So untangling all of that can be really, really powerful for you. Maureen says, so what if you're not a breakfast person? Great. Then don't eat breakfast food. I'm totally with that. Like back growing up, my friends would always laugh at me because they're like, you have burritos for breakfast, Now I could have plant-based burritos now if I wanted to for breakfast, I suppose. But anyway, I've never been a huge breakfast person. I just haven't been. So if you're not a breakfast person, that's okay. The cool thing is that whatever you eat for dinner can be your breakfast. Like if you make a really, really good forks over knives recipe or dish, or a good chili, or a good stew, or a good salad, or a good burrito bowl, then eat that for breakfast. And if none of that sounds appetizing to you and you're hungry, underscored, as long as you're hungry, then go with fruit. That's often what I would go with. Beans and greens would be my priority. Fruit would be second. Are you really hungry? That's the other thing. Sometimes we're not breakfast people because we're not really hungry, but we feel like we should eat. We eat a large green salad before having cooked foods. And that's Mark. If you don't know Mark's story, Mark, you could tell more about the organization that you run. Amazing. Mark has been plant-based since birth. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice to be plant-based since birth? I'm sure that there's also been challenges in that, or I would imagine there may be. But look how dialed in. I mean, my coach Sharon McRae, she eats a big salad before having cooked food too, in most instances. And that again is sequencing at its finest, folks. You want to get your greens in. Your greens have vital nutrients, but on top of that, what they also do is they start to fill you up. Now, you can't live off of all the greens alone. That's why he says before his cooked food. So before his potatoes, or maybe even his beans, or whatever, his rice, his oatmeal, whatever comes next. But to have a big salad before. It's amazing if you can get used to that, how your body not just becomes used to it, it craves that sort of way. I like to have fun with food, Joseph says, spice and flavor. You know what's crazy about when you go plant-based is that you realize that it's all these other cultures that have foods that are utilizing all the spices. That for whatever reason, or there's lots of reasons, but we won't get into it, a lot of the spices and flavors that are out there, the Western diet is not incorporating those. So, the one that I mention all the time is Ethiopian food. I eat it like 4 to 5 days a week, and you think I'm lying, but I'm not. I eat it 4 or 5 days a week. I've had it already twice this week. Wait, is it twice? No, 3 times. 3 times this week already. So tomorrow will be 4. See, I'll get my 4 in. And what I learned about is a spice called berberi, which is basically a bunch of different spices blended together. And it's got very low to no sodium. And it's got a bunch of spice, a bunch of kick. It's almost like it tastes salty, but it's not. And you could add that to your lentils and have spicy lentils. You could add that to your greens. Turmeric's another great spice. There's a spice in Ethiopian culture called mita, which is like this, if you like heat, it's got some heat to it. There's tons of Mexican spices, Indian spices. You can do a lot of flavor with spice without doing sodium, without doing fat. It's unbelievable. You'll lose weight doing it that way too. Ashley, I appreciate you. I'm not bored, lonely anymore, so my eating is way better. That is good. Sometimes for me, like the bored thing is like it could be it could even be a cue of having energy and like needing to go get that energy out. I think that sometimes that's something that we don't always pay attention to, that maybe we need to go for a jog or a run or go spend some time outside, or you know what, here's another thing that we forget. It's a spiritual cue. That's one that I think a lot of times when we say bored, it's kind of like we need to go recenter ourselves spiritually. So what does that look like for you? For me, that might be praying, meditating, journaling, connecting, linking up, having some fellowship with someone, having some deep conversations. Every feeling I get, Joseph, you're on fire today. I love it. Every feeling I get, I could turn into a good meal. Yeah, absolutely. We could eat for all of the different emotions. And I think the cool thing about intuitive eating and plant-based eating is that in the Rewriting My Story program, which is what we're doing here through this channel and through the program we have online, which we'll drop a link in if you want to join us. But it's basically saying that we're going to untangle your emotions and we're going to make it its own separate compartment. And it's going to be something that you learn to tune into and you learn to advocate for. So if you're stressed, you learn to advocate for feeling stressed. If you're anxious, you learn to advocate for calmness and peace in response to anxiety. If you're lonely, you learn how to find connection. We basically rewire and create direct wiring, not to pseudo symptom relief, but actual symptom relief. We get you back in community. We get you back to believing in yourself. We get you back to telling a new story and living out a new story. And all of that is what then unlocks you to no longer need food to be paired with your emotions. So that is really powerful. Otherwise, we're going to eat away just about everything that there is. I don't normally eat when I first wake up. It could be a couple hours later. Yeah, Maureen, I think that's, again, that's fine. And again, I think that there are so many, part of what you're doing, and not all of you are pursuing plant-based eating. You don't have to be involved with anything that I'm doing. It's simply something that myself and a lot of the guests on the program find to be hugely life-changing. So we're going to tell you about it because we really want everyone else to feel it too. But one of the things is that a lot of what you're doing initially is you're taking off, you're unlearning all of the rules that we have learned with dieting. So some people say you have to eat when you first wake up. I no longer believe in that. If you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have said that's true. I don't find that to be truth anymore. I don't find that to be truth because of the research I've seen and because of the experiments I've seen with my own body. I think it's more important to eat when you're hungry than just eat to eat. Great question. I'm not lying. Ashley said I'm not. I truly eat Ethiopian all the time. BJ's on. How are you, BJ? So good to see you again. She was on our Tuesday night broadcast. If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure that you make sure that you go ahead and check that out. It was an amazing broadcast. I'll tell you that one of the things of feedback I've gotten from your interview, BJ, is that people loved how vulnerable you were. People loved how positive and encouraging you were. But I think that honestly, they wouldn't have appreciated the second part without the first part. So I want to give you that feedback. Because you were vulnerable about your story and you told it in such an honest way, it really allowed that encouragement, that passion to take deeper root. So yeah, just really want to say again, thank you very much for that interview. Many people were really touched by it. What up? I'm looking forward to seeing you too. Have you talked to Ashley about us coming out there to talk? Believe me, we got limited time, but if we can make it happen, I want to make it happen. So here we got a couple more questions, and I'll go back into some other things. Again, if you guys are just joining in, we want to take as many questions as you possibly have for me. I'm a therapist, so if you have questions about relationships, emotions, emotional eating, if you have questions also about plant-based dieting and eating, I'm going to give that to you from my own experience having gone through it. But that's not my specialty or forte, but I have been plant-based for 8 months. I can answer questions on that. What have I been doing lately is juicing, smoothies, protein shakes instead in AM. I have a NutriBullet I use. I have NutriBullet also. juicing, smoothies, protein shakes instead in the AM. Yeah, so I don't know what your goals are, Maureen, but because someone else was asking around weight loss, I will just say if there is a way that you can turn into what, all those are good things. I'm gonna tell you next level, 'cause that's what my coach would always say. That's good. Everything you're doing is good. If you want to know what the next level is, the next level to that would be to instead of juicing the fruit or instead of blending the fruit, to eat it full in its full form. The reason being is that you tend to get more fiber and nutrients if you eat the fruit. Now, it's not just about the consumption of the nutrients. It's also that something about the chewing process and going through that and eating the fruits in their whole forms as opposed to juicing them. It doesn't spike your blood sugar levels as quickly, and it tends to fill you up. You can eat 30 strawberries all put in a NutriBullet, but it's harder to actually eat 30 strawberries. Try that experiment sometime. And so that kind of shows you that if you can eat it in its pure form, that's great. And if you want to go the next level above that, try eating some beans and some greens for breakfast. That's if you're concerned at all with losing weight, which I'm not sure if you are or you're not, but that's also for anyone else that is curious too. So it's sometimes better to hold your fast longer some days, all based on how you feel. Yeah, again, I want to defer on that one to... Yeah, I want to defer to the community out there. Dr. Greger, nutritionfacts.org. That Dr. Greger is a MD that is incredibly smart. He basically does not practice currently in his private practice because all he does is read research and then create videos and articles to synthesize research, taking into account bias, including which research studies are funded with certain agendas in mind. What, if it's a sample size of 5, he would tell you that those research findings probably aren't too big compared to a sample size of 360. Or he looks at all the stuff and he basically breaks it down into 2-minute, 3-minute videos and short articles. It's amazing. So Dr. Greger, nutritionfacts.org. It's a nonprofit website that he runs. Check out his site. So there's so many people that are experts on the intermittent fasting out there, and they'll talk about it. I just know with my experience that I use it because in part my body craves it. And I don't know if that's because I'm using up stored fat, which I know throughout my process I probably have. But I just know that if I'm not hungry, I'm not eating, basically. And I'm trying to eat between the hours, typically cutting off at 8 p.m. is when I try to do. Mark just threw in here too, healthscience.org for more info on the conference. So yeah, he's talking about a conference that is coming up, which is great. Let's see, I'm gonna go back up. Digestion starts with chewing. Absolutely. BJ, what's the term for that? There's a term for that. What's the term for that? See? I'm getting out of my scope. BJ could tell you what the term for that is. But yeah, digestion starts with chewing. Like kiwi skin and all. I'm gonna ask if Dr. Greger could do... Dr. Greger, so you know, this is how serious this guy is about his nutrition. You know how he eats his kiwis? He eats them the right way, not the wrong way. All of you are eating kiwis the wrong way, except Dr. Greger and myself. You got to eat that thing like an apple. Sprinkle some water on it, but you need to then eat that thing like an apple. Make sure that you take the sticker off, but you need to bite into that thing like an apple. You'll get past that texture at first. I know for some of you, you guys are texture eaters. You think the nutrition and the fiber is in the skin. So eat your kiwis like apples. That's all I got to say. Any advice on talking to a teenager daughter about food addiction? Oh yeah, this is a great topic. She's highly addicted to flour, breads, pasta, etc. She seems to do well on the Bright Line eating plan, but I keep hearing about not weighing and measuring food. Okay, so I'm going to answer that question first as a therapist because I work with lots of people around food addiction and emotional eating. So I want to speak to that first. One of the things is that I think it's really hard to speak to a teenager about anything as their parent. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. So I feel for you. Secondly, it's true for just about anyone that it's easy for people to take messages from people they don't know quite as well, that they have, that aren't their parents or aren't their spouses. So if there's some level of support that you can get from a third party, now the beauty is that third party could be a YouTube video or a documentary that maybe she's open to watching with you or watching on her own. And again, you can't force feed this stuff down her throat. You have to just kind of make it. I'd like you to talk with one of my friends, or I have a video that maybe you'd want to watch. There's a lot of shame associated with our bad habits, especially when it comes to food. So it's really, really, really touchy to bring up stuff like food addiction and eating habits, especially for teenagers. They're going through a developmental stage where a lot of their acceptance and their identity is formed around being accepted. And so there can be lots of resistance to that. So first of all, I feel for you. That's really tough. I also just know that looking at those foods that you mentioned, and again, Judy's mentioning flour, breads, pastas, etc. Those foods, because they're processed foods. So some of those are plant-based foods, but they're processed plant-based foods. Those do get in our brains into releasing dopamine and getting in the pleasure trap a little bit more easily, so that they can be potentially habit forming. So again, I want to say that it's tough to have those conversations. I would use the educational route, and I would probably approach it in that way. And yeah, I think, saying that we don't measure foods, we don't weigh foods out, I think is important, but especially it's important for the whole foods. So really, you could have unlimited fruit. So almost making it incentivized to, we might tell you to watch how many whole wheat pitas you have, or how many flour tortillas you have, or how many whole wheat tortillas you have. But when it comes to all this other stuff, it's unlimited. And then the final thing is modeling, and I imagine, Judy, because you know your stuff by the way you phrased that question, I'm sure you do a pretty darn good job of modeling yourself. But it's one of those things where sometimes when kids are, part of being a teenager is differentiating. So if your parents are conservative, you become liberal. And if your parents like classic rock, you all of a sudden hate it. And you can't take it personal. That's part of the developmental stage. So just keep doing the right thing and getting them in front of the right information. And I think with time, kids usually come back around to the truth on that type of stuff. Mark's talking about the National Health Association. They're having a 3-day conference with leading doctors, and they're serving 6 amazing meals that will be all whole foods, plant-based, without any added salt, oil, or sugar, which is SOS. It's in Cleveland from June 29th to July 11th. That's great information, you guys. If anyone's in the Cleveland area, Mark, we're in the process of talking about having on as a guest on the program on Tuesday nights. You'll hear more from Mark, but in the meantime, check out more about Mark's conference. And he talked about going to the conference website for more information. Joseph says, do you worry about your estrogen and testosterone levels changing? Nah, not too much, because I really believe that whole foods, plant-based way of eating, a lot of those things, those lab tests and those things we got to worry about, honestly, go eat the stuff that we were meant to eat. We've been eating for most of our lives. Most of the diets that of cultures that came to the United States were based on whole foods, plant-based. Before they came to the United States, that's when they got injected with all of the meat and the dairy, which started causing problems with testosterone, problems with estrogen. So I'm not worried about it, and I don't think that you should have to be either. That's my opinion. Let's see. It's just too hairy. I imagine Crystal's speaking about the kiwi. First of all, it's not hair. It's not hair follicles. I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you, like, every time you guys talk bad about the kiwi, I go home and I'm gonna crush 2 kiwis for you. I'm just gonna do it, because the energy you get from the kiwi, right? I'm in love. That's all I want to say. That's what she said. Thank you, BJ. Beat me to the punch. It's hard to talk to anyone who isn't ready to listen. 100%, Joseph. So hard. I will listen, but not always follow through, Maureen. hey, you, me, and everyone else on this live broadcast can relate to that. We go through stages of change. When it actually comes to change, we go through a denial stage. We go through a pre-contemplation stage, which I love. It's you're not even contemplating change. You're thinking about changing. So that's actually a stage of change where you're like, yeah, that information sounds great, but I'm just thinking about doing it. So there are stages of change, and it takes a while to actually move from contemplation all the way into action. And it's not unlikely that sometimes we move from action all the way back to denial again, and we start the process over before the change actually sticks. So be patient with yourself. It takes time to change these things. Look at BJ right on time says, Maureen, it took me 3 years of listening until I followed through. Yeah, same for me. I saw Forks Over Knives, I don't know, whenever it came out. I saw it years and years ago. I saw it like 3 or 4 times. I would watch it knowing it was truth. And I would be like eating chicken, chicken and brown rice while I was eating it because I was a paleo eater. So I guess I probably wasn't eating much brown rice at the time. But I was eating paleo watching Forks Over Knives. But I couldn't get myself to eat plant-based. I knew it was the answer. I didn't just know it in my heart. I've told this story before. I'm a spiritual guy, and I truly felt like God was saying to me, yep. And it took me like 3 years to go, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And my stubborn butt took me 3 years to finally do it. And then I got a coach and everything changed. And now I'm not going back. So it takes time. Be patient with yourselves. Guys, it's been such a good office hours. I know we have a couple more minutes left. Again, the only other things I was going to tell you about is 2 quick things on the way out. The book, I've already told you about it. There's going to be a book coming out later this year, at the latest early next year. It's going to be a book that is going to give you the principles of rewriting your story. My goal is to make it a digestible read, so not a long read. If you want a long read, go look up my dissertation. It's online. Everyone can read. It's free. It's 160 pages. I don't think you want to read that. It's great. It's a great tranquilizer, though. It'll put you to sleep every night because of the academic language in it. It's a fascinating study, but it's written really dense. Anyway, I want it to be a digestible book. I want it to be very foundational to what it takes to rewrite your story. And it's going to come down to these core beliefs that you have to not buy into up here, but actually start feeling in your heart, feeling in your bones, as Brene Brown would say, in order to rewrite your story. And so that foundation is going to be included in the video lessons. If you're in the program, you don't have to re-sign up. I'm just going to load those video lessons in there as soon as they're done. The video lessons will be done in the next month. So if you're in the program right now, or if you're not in the program, get in the program right now. You already have over 35 video lessons that teach you about what your emotional eating cycle is. That teach you, how do I rewrite my story? How do I have hard conversations with resistant people? What are the stages I'm going to go through? How do I redefine my why? All of that stuff is covered in the Rewriting My Story program. And you can find that on my website, drmondo.org. Under programs. You can sign up today and you can get started, and we're just going to load those videos in as soon as we get them, and those videos will be turned into a book. So I am just so excited to get that going. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is that Dr. Casey Johnson has the Unlock Wellness podcast. Dr. Johnson is a workhorse in this community. Amazing. And I say workhorse because I just got interviewed. I'm the most recent interview that she had, so I'm plugging that. Go listen to that. If you were ever interested in hearing what my story is, I touch on it here and there. I'm actually going to probably do a Facebook Live on Tuesday night one week where I have someone interview me down the road. I had someone suggest that to me recently, and I'm totally up for it. I have no problem being 100% honest, open, and vulnerable. But often I feel like my job is to set other people up with their stories, but I have no problem in telling mine. I got a chance to tell my story on Dr. Casey Johnson's podcast. It's called the Unlock Wellness Podcast. It's on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, you name it, it's out there. It just released today. It would be awesome if you could just go check out that podcast, give it a listen, and give me feedback. What did you take from it? What was important that you took away? What could you relate to? So again, that's a podcast that just came out. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link if Ashley can, or I will too. We will drop the link into this right here, so you can go ahead and give that a listen. And it was a lot of fun. Again, the Unlocking Wellness podcasts, amazing podcast where Dr. Johnson interviews tons of different folks in the plant-based world about their journeys. And if just kind of like my show, there's a story that you can really resonate with out there, and you'll go, wow, that's me talking. And so it's really cool. So check that out. That's it. That's an hour. That flew by. I better get home. Get to go see my son, my daughter, my wife. I think we're going to go for a walk or a bike ride today, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So I'm going to go get home and get to that. If you guys are in New Jersey, I'll see you soon. I'll be out there on next Thursday. I'll be in New York on Wednesday, and New Jersey on Thursday, and Boston on Friday, and for the weekend. And then I'll be in Baltimore, DC starting that Monday, and we'll do an event that Monday in the Baltimore, DC area. So anyway, if you're in those areas, please come out. I can't wait to see you guys. And if not, make sure that you take a look into the program, or just stay tuned. We're back on Tuesday with another episode of Rewriting My Story. And the guest that we're going to have on that episode is a guest that I'm not going to announce their name yet, but it's someone very courageous. We can't just interview people that feel like they've got it all figured out. And let me take a step back. No one I've interviewed has thought they have it all figured out, but you think they have it all figured out because you look at them and you go, they look great. Oh my God, they can't relate to me. This program in this station is about helping people that feel hopeless, feel left out, feel like they're on the sidelines. So we're going to have someone on the program who's coming on saying, I lost the weight and I've gained some of it back. And I'm on the path to gaining it all back if I don't do something now. How courageous is that, right? To come on Facebook Live and to tell that story. She's going to come on with the owner of the gym that she goes to. We are going to interview them about her story and why it's so important to help people in situations like that. Because so often what happens is those people end up hiding into more shame, and they retreat, they gain all the weight back, and then there's this mountain of shame that they have to do to start over. So again, that's going to happen. The gym is the Lift Gym. Joseph throwing a shout out to the Lift Gym. That's where we will be. We will be there, and the gym owner is Matt Jennings, and so we'll have that broadcast for you Tuesday. And oh yeah, there'll be a broadcast for you Monday too, something very similar. And there'll be another broadcast for you Monday. So we got you Monday, we got you Tuesday. We'll have tons of Facebook Live. Next week, you are going to get lots of video lives going on from the East Coast, and we can't wait. Plenty of opportunities to help people. If there's anything that inspired you, share it. If there's anything that you think we could talk more about, let us know. We're always listening. You guys have a great night, and we will see you soon.